Okay, so welcome everyone. Thanks for attending the session. Thanks for having me. Florian asked me to talk a little bit about other projects that are related to storytelling, and this is just to start with a little bit of how I see the purpose of visualization in projects like InTaVia, so the ones that somehow bring together computational power with cultural data. And I see the purpose of visualization as, let's say, the connection between domain experts with the data to allow them to analyze data, to get some new insights, some new perspective also of quantitative means. So there's like a connection between domain expertise, domain knowledge, and computer science. And the most convenient is to work with something that is intuitive, visual. Now, when we talk about storytelling, it goes a little bit further in my point of view. So storytelling is like, or let's say we design tools that work for domain experts so that somehow allow them to get information. We have seen that in Stefan's project, Damast. I would assume if I would give the tool to a general public user, they would not get anything out of it, although there are, I think, very interesting information derivable with the tool. So when we talk about storytelling, we talk about how can we make scientific results accessible to people outside of this area. So general public accessibility. So to somehow connect public interest with science, so to say. So this is something we have done in InTaVia. So on the left-hand side, we see a screenshot of the Visual Analytics Studio. On the right-hand side, we see the storytelling suite, and this is consistent of a creator and a viewer component. So whereas the creator looks a little bit more challenging to operate, the viewer is like the possibility for users to consume stories, but the users would not be the domain experts. Those would be like those interested in the stories we want to tell. So, and when Florian asked me to join this project, I was also a little bit like, yeah, I am not really a storytelling person, at least not from my point of view. But when we look at Segel and Herr's definition of storytelling, it starts like a continuum between what they called reader-driven storytelling and author-driven storytelling. So whereas reader-driven storytelling is something we can do with a Visual Analytics Studio because it's we have like all different visualizations and we can somewhat browse interactively. We can, so to say, design our own story. And I think this is something I can really relate to what I have done in the past, especially when you publish a paper about visualization, you would usually have usage scenarios, and what you do when you write usage scenarios in your paper is actually you do storytelling. So you could generate some screenshots of your visualization, and then you would describe, with the help of domain experts, for instance, you would tell a story with visualization why your approach makes sense. So quite reader-driven because I have all the opportunities. Author-driven storytelling is when a domain expert, for instance, designs a story and has a clear, straight path for the consumer to consume or to get the story. Okay, so but now related projects that we have at SDU. And I want to take a look at 3 different projects of different maturity. So musicology is an unfunded project that Jakob is mainly working on in collaboration with musicologists. Then the MEMORISE project, which is a EU Horizon Europe project, and American Pictures Digital is a project that we are still seeking funding for. But very different ideas. So musicology, to start with, is in essence very similar to InTaVia, but focusing on a particular area. So here it's about sustainable instrument making, I would say. So we have this visual exploration interface that allows us to, let's say, browse instruments that are used in orchestras based on different features, but with a focus on, let's say, what resources instruments are made of. And so it allows us to see the tree species and their threat statuses. So to get an idea of, okay, this instrument, is this like a sustainable instrument that can be produced in the future, or do we have to probably find alternative resources because species the instrument is made of are a threat to extinction, for instance. So, and we have different visuals. So we have an orchestra view, we have the tree map that shows us, let's say, the tree species and some pictures of how the wood looks like. Then we have a timeline that shows us, gives us an idea about the development of threat statuses, and we have a map which we can explore where where the tree species grow. Okay, so this is like designed for biologists, for music instrument makers, but like say for a very particular crowd of experts. But this is not a tool necessarily for general public, interested from the general public who would like to get information or to also, let's say, explore the data. So therefore, Jakob and Silke were creating a storytelling, and this is just a short snippet of a video. And so we can see, okay, we can scroll on the right-hand side and we will see an update or a reference on the left-hand side. We see here, for instance, the distribution of orchestras around the world. So we have this visualization-based storytelling on the left-hand side. The whole thing is visualization-based, but we have the story on the right-hand side, and we always see an update on the left-hand side. So, and as you scroll on the right-hand side, you will see different references to the story of the instrument bow, I think, is it here? And we see also on the left-hand side that we reuse the visualizations that we have prepared in this visual analytics system. But we can interact, so we can read the story, so we can read the storyline that is like curated from an expert, and we can also browse the data a little bit. So we can stop and browse and explore as we wish. Yes. Okay. So that's, is it finished project, Jakob? More or less. The publications is a little bit, but that's it. But the product is, so to say, there. So Memorize, to move on to the next project, is a Horizon Europe project, and this was like an initiative right at the beginning of the Horizon Europe program where we were facing COVID. And the EU was very concerned with creating digital tools for preserving cultural heritage and for making cultural heritage also accessible in digital forms. So the main purpose of Memorize is to, let's say, keep alive or, let's say, convey the memories of victims of Nazi persecution in new forms. So we are dealing a lot with personal documents like diaries written by people imprisoned in concentration camps, for instance, or letters, testimonies, photographs, but I think mostly diaries and testimonies. And we have a pipeline that is quite comparable to InTaVia, but on the right-hand side, so the major goal is to create new digital tools to, let's say, connect with the victims, so to say. And we have different approaches, so MEMORISE is not even 1 year old, but we already have some results. But I would like to show you some of the storytelling ideas that we have here. So let's start with Rebecca, that's how I call her. So just suppose we have an Instagram message that says, so sad, found the place where Lily suffered by MEMORISE. So this is like considered an Instagram post. And we see like a picture of the Bergen-Belsen memorial site with a 3D model on top of it. And the idea of this smartphone, or of this concept here, is that Rebecca would be able to download the app, so she can install the MEMORISE app. And then she has the opportunity to, let's say, browse the personal experiences we have in our data set, so to say. So she could connect, for instance, with David Rubinovic or Ari Koretz. And she might probably not be interested in, let's say, following or looking at the history or the experiences of male victims. So we provide Rebecca with the opportunity to let's say, add some information on her profile, for instance, gender, age group, places she would be interested in, topics she would be interested in. So just for that sake, female to 20 to 30, and she would be interested in literature. And we also allow her to track the usage, or let's say to track what Rebecca is interested in. So as soon as she provides this information, she gets other suggestions or recommendations which could be interesting victims to follow. Yes, and as soon as she starts following, for instance, Hannah, she would get with push notifications, as we know, but she would probably get updates about how Hannah experienced life in the concentration camp Bergen-Belsen. As we see here, we have the 20th of August, and we get a message from the 20th of August, 83 years ago. So the idea is to experience or to read about the experiences of Hannah in a different form, as we would take a diary and we would read the diary. So this is like slides from 1 year ago, so apologies for that. We just had a discussion about the actual design a week ago, which is a little bit confidential to show here. But this is one of the ideas, so to get new ways in connecting with victims of Nazi persecution. And she could take, let's say, this also to the memorial site or to other places that Hannah is referring to. So we can see here in the back, we have something like a model that sits on top of a green grass. And for that, previous projects have already, let's say, captured the 3D models of concentration camps. So this is like a previous project in which the concentration camp Bergen-Belsen was digitally reconstructed. So, and we see a lot of gray buildings, and but we can use models like these to create experiences in augmented reality. So when we would have a tablet and we would walk at the real memorial site, we could overlay the grass with these with reconstructions of barracks, for instance. So now the truth is a little bit different because Bergen-Belsen is in Germany, and connectivity to the internet is a bit limited, so it's a little bit hard to get this running on site on this memorial site. But of course, MEMORISE should work also in other places. Okay, so We can see here now the entrance to where the people were imprisoned. And the idea of MEMORISE is not just to create new models, because at the end they won't really change a lot, but we want to somehow connect what we already have, or our plan is to fill these models with life, so to say. And so we are talking about, let's say, interiors. Can we talk about how the barracks looked, for instance, from the inside? And we do not just want to create our own or the historian's view on how this, about the life that people faced. We want to use paintings of people who were in these camps. So this is like an example of this painting by Abadi, I think. Abadi is his name, yeah. And so what we do is we 3D-ify these paintings, and I have a video for this as well, which is manual work mostly in the first place. So it's a little bit the trial and error approach, but we can somehow create 3D models of these paintings, and we can navigate them also then in a three-dimensional frame, and we can create annotation points in which we can use to tell story about how life has been in concentration camps. This is like, you can imagine we have these dull gray models, and we try to locate this scene within the dull model. So we can enhance the dull gray model with some new views. We have another example here from the interior of a concentration, of a barrack in a concentration camp. So we have again these two-dimensional painting, and we have now a 3D version of this painting, in which we have, again, which you can see here, the different annotation points, which we can use to navigate a user through the story of that tells about the experience within a barrack from a prisoner. Okay, I think that's enough for that one. One of the projects we have done in this context was a virtual reconstruction of the Bernburg Euthanasia Center, and this is a very quick walkthrough, so this has like 20 annotation points to tell a story. But this is like a virtual visit of the killing institution. So what is nice here, what we can see is that we can, let's say, this is like a contemporary model of the facility, and we can put, let's say, some things that are not existent anymore. Like here we see the crematory that is not existent anymore, but we can, let's say, this time put some dull models into the existing one. And so this is like, the story that is told here is just like what the guide would tell you when he or she would walk you through the facility. But here our idea is to enhance these stories, or to create new stories, because we have a lot of testimonies, or let's say interviews were done in the 60s by staff who worked at the facility. So all of the people that were brought to the facility were actually killed, around 14,000. So there's very little information about the victims, but there's a lot of information through the interviews from the staff, so how the whole process worked. These were done in the 60s, and we can use these as like, let's not guide us by the guide through the memorial site, let the doctors or the nurses guide us through the facility. So this is like creating new experiences. They might be intense, so we have to evaluate what comes out of this here before we let the general public experience those. But this is like what MEMORISE is doing. MEMORISE tries to connect memories or experiences, personal experiences, with space and time. Okay, no, we had this already. So project number 3 I want to briefly mention is American Pictures Digital. So American Pictures is, let's say, a book with a lot of photographs from the United States, from Jacob Holt. Has anyone heard about Jacob Holt here in this room? Jakob, you do not count. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about Jacob Holt. So Jacob Holt is, has been traveling the United States. I just ran a video of one of his lectures. So he has been traveling the United States in the 70s, and he made a lot of photographs. So he's actually a photographer. So he documented his experiences in the United States. So this is like when he came back. So he's photographed, or he lived together with the poor black people. He lived together with people from the Ku Klux Klan. He lived together with, or he visited the Rockefellers. So he had a lot of impressions about living together. So how about social inequalities, about exclusion, oppression. So all these social ills that, let's say, belong to the American society, especially in the 70s. And so he had like a tour in the 70s that took him like 1 to 2 years, and took like 16,000 pictures or so. And afterwards, he revisited the United States and gave lectures. So he gave around 7,000 lectures at universities and schools about his experiences. And here we can see a picture. So 1973, so he was there at this point living together with people from the Ku Klux Klan, and when he gives lectures, it's like, so he had I saw one lecture of him that took like 2 hours, and I saw around 400 slides or so. He goes very quickly through let's say, biographies of the people he visited, which he also revisited in the future, to tell their stories and to also frame this, and like, it's very inclusive kind of experience. It's like, it shows us like the state of, or how the state of our society looks like. But he also like is very integrative. It's not like pointing the finger towards someone. He also like draws relations between, let's say, the poor black people and the poor white people, which actually are like the Klan people, are all very poor, as he says. So, and the general idea of this project is to preserve the way he tells stories. He's like 76 or 77 now old, so he has reduced, of course, the number of lectures he gives. He gives a lot of lectures in Danish schools these days. But he started writing on Instagram about his picture. So he will pick a picture, then he will write about his experiences, what he remembers on these pictures. So, and we want to somehow bring together all his knowledge. So he has photographs, they are digitized. We do not necessarily have like dates and places associated with all the photographs, so this is going to be tricky. We have diaries, we have postcards, audios, videos, we have lots of multimodal data resources. So, and the questions we will target in this project is to digitize the sources that are not digitized yet. How can we integrate his memories? Because he has lots of anecdotes in his mind, so he will tell us always like lots of stories that are not necessarily written on a postcard or somewhere else. How can we connect these resources? How we can connect an information on a postcard with a photograph, for instance? And what's the most important is we want to create a learning interface for schools, because we want to somehow create a new experience that survives for longer. Okay, so just to sum up, and so where I see the future challenges of storytelling, so I probably refer to the second one first. So maybe we can create something like a reader as author-driven storytelling. So everyone comes to, when you are faced with cultural heritage or with like the MEMORISE project with these, everyone has probably other interests and can be engaged with other victims or stories to, let's say, engage with the materials. So maybe we can create, with the use of AI, we can create somehow semi-curated stories that work and that keep you engaged in the theme. Yeah, more immersive experiences, so to relate cultural heritage to the space we walk, to the time we are in at the moment. Important, I would say, for cultural institutions is reproducibility. So can I create a framework that can be adopted by different cultural heritage institutions with not so, or easily, so to say. Diversity-aware cultural heritage experiences. We saw gender bias earlier on, and also cultural heritage experiences need to be somehow diversity-aware for different or for a diverse audience. I like to conclude with this picture because my vision, so I showed this at the meeting in Graz before. This is my son we visited this castle, and it was like a traditional tour in which we walked around. And this is like after 5 minutes he was out of business, so he was totally uninterested in what this guy was telling us. So my vision would be maybe we can create at some point in time storytellings or systems, digital tools that keep everyone active in dealing with the cultural heritage that we are dealing with. So something that works for my son, who's 6 years old, but also there was an elderly lady who was taking photographs of all the lamps all the time for some reason, I don't know. Okay, thank you very much.